Should I start? Yes. Okay, hi. I'm Laura McCoy, and I'm here from Oregon CIS, which is an outreach unit under the College of Education at the University of Oregon. Oregon CIS is a statewide consortium, and next year we'll be 50 years old.
Wow.
I know, isn't that cool? It's kind of amazing. Just how important localized information is in terms of career planning and education planning. So this is being live streamed. This is my first experience with this, but I have been told that if you send in your questions, because I welcome your questions, if you send in your questions, then Emily can read them to me, and I can answer them. There are two handouts that you would have received via email or you'll receive soon thereafter. One is an overview of what a career information system is. A career information system, the concept was started here at the University of Oregon nearly 50 years ago, actually more than that. And it became a national concept, so there's a national office for the career information as well. And it talks a little bit about what that means for data. And then the second handout relates to the development that is currently ongoing or has been recently completed by Oregon CIS. We've been really fortunate and received a number of grants. I recently became a principal investigator for our National Science Foundation grants to help students with disabilities access STEM careers. And so those dollars are enhancing the system. And as a consortium, our values are when there are new enhancements that's shared out. So this document describes some of those enhancements through those grant dollars. One of the big ones, before I get into the detail, is we became mobile friendly last spring. So students can use CIS on tablets and phones, and we'll be getting a new design fairly soon to make that even more seamless and easily accessible. I've been asked to speak very specifically to some tools that are in CIS, our sorts tools, and that's where I'm going to start. So last spring, we started to develop, or we released as an open pilot, Oregon Certificate Sort. From a career development perspective, all work has value and all training has value. And so what we have done is we've created a tool in which people can find short-term training opportunities based on any number of criteria. And so I'm going to just give some examples here. So for example, one of the factors that people can choose is the type of credential. So for professionals, let's say they're looking for a graduate or professional certificate, they can see all the graduate and professional certificates available in the state of Oregon by institutions in the state. So for example, here is addictions counseling by Portland State University. And if I click on that, open the plus sign, I get a description that's provided by that school as to what those outcomes are for that particular program of study. We embed a natural next step, which in this case just happens to be a link to the program, the type, amount of time, and the total cost. So lots of different factors go into these descriptions. The type of credential can be pathway certificates. So let's say that you are looking at students that are very interested in those stackable credentials offered at community colleges. So they can use pathways, or maybe it's apprenticeships, or maybe it's really important that they get into a licensed occupation. So that's just a couple details under the credential topic that people can choose. Other examples that might happen is if people are very interested in going to school in a particular location. So let's choose Multnomah County. And maybe they have a particular course of study that they're interested in, let's say welding. They can see the different types of programs that people pursue if they're interested in welding, and then get their results. So you can choose one factor or many factors. And for example, here Portland Community College has a program, Flux Core Arc Welding, with a link to the information and then a phone number for the college. We also include outcome data whenever we have it, as well as whether or not a program qualifies for WIOA funding, which is the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. An example with 3 factors, I'm going to go ahead and start over, just to give some different ideas. Let's say you have a student who is certain that they can stand school after high school for 16 weeks and no more. So there's duration. They can talk about different types of duration. Maybe they want to go to school online. They don't want to go to school at a location. They want to do it online. And just to get those results, you can see that there are 55 programs at 17 schools in the state of Oregon that meet those two factors. A lot of them have to do with taxes. You also have sports management, so I'm interested in being a general manager. I can see what that looks like for a sporting group. If I wanted to add in pre-licensing, so let's say that it was a student who was interested in getting pre-licensed in a particular occupation, what that means is there's a statewide licensing board. So there's norms, professional norms for that particular occupation. And oftentimes those norms will translate to other states. You know, same thing with teaching credentials. You know, you can have articulation agreements. This particular example, you can see there's the auto dealer pre-license that is at Your Pace Online LLC in Josephine. You've got tax schools, but you also have things like a community health worker at Rogue Community College. So there's lots of different opportunities, and from here you can see it links to the Career Pathway Roadmap. You've got an email for who to contact for this particular program of study, and then links. This particular tool, I think, encapsulates a lot of what constitutes Oregon CIS and our values and how we put things together. The way in which this particular tool was developed, we were included in a grant by the state with organizations that are funded through WIOA. And how many of you are familiar with WIOA? Very familiar? So it's a lot of our adult users. So CIS is used in the employment offices. It's used in vocational rehabilitation offices. So we put together an advisory panel from those offices and central administration. So we'd have people from Salem, but also people who are working with customers or Oregonians out in the field. And we brought together this advisory panel and we said, what factors should there be? What are the most important factors that Oregonians use to determine what kind of licensing or short-term certificate or training program they want to engage in? And that's how this list of factors was developed. And then once that list was developed, we had analysts in our office that went out and worked with every single school in the state to get the detailed information for these programs of study so that it was meaningful. So it's very localized information, and that data is updated every year. So every year we go out to the schools and we update this data for every single program of study. One of the things that, oh, yes?
Yeah, I'm curious, is your organization vetting the schools that end up on this in some way, or is it just any school that offers a certificate ends up on this list?
You know what, thank you for asking that question, because that was my other point that I couldn't remember. So it is. We're really careful who we include. And let me give an example. So historically, I report to a board. Okay. So there's a board of 20 plus people who represent the different stakeholders. So someone is on there from high school, someone's on there from middle school, someone's on there from employment offices. And the board votes and approves our inclusion policies for schools, for financial aid. So we have different thresholds. Mm-hmm. Historically, what that included was it had to be a school that was licensed within the state of Oregon and in business for at least a year in order to make sure that federal dollars could be used to send someone to those schools. With this program, though, we expanded our inclusion policy because some of the programs under WIOA are on what is called the ETPL list. So that's the Eligible Training Providers list. And that includes schools or programs that they have been vetted by local offices. So there's a couple coding schools that are actually not schools licensed with the state, but because they're on the Eligible Training Providers list and because they have a formal relationship with the state, we've included them.
Okay.
But we're very careful. We've got to have a source of data that is codifiable and is comprehensive in order for us to pull them. Okay, that's a great question.
Thank you.
Sure. That, though, also speaks to something which is we also use an iterative process. So it's not like we do something and it's done. One of the things that came out through this process is people really wanted to have apprenticeship programs that were offered by industry, say union training positions, or and then outcome data from the HEC. And so we've expanded that inclusion policy to allow those apprenticeship programs to be included, and we're gathering that data now. So
great.
historically, our apprenticeship programs have only been those that are affiliated with community colleges, and now it will also include those union providers. So
Awesome.
so it works, but it's a very much an intentional process as to what gets included in CIS and who is able to be there.
Thank you.
Sure. It's a great question. Any other questions? Okay. Expansions of the data. I mentioned the apprenticeships. We're going to be getting outcome data from the HEC, so that has to do with how many people went through this program and became employed, and that's gathered locally, so within the state. Another thing that we are talking about, and I've talked with the Department of Education, the Oregon Department of Education, is CTE programs. They, if students within the K-12 environment become certified or get a credential through a CTE program, then dollars come back to that school. And so if and when that list of approved programs by the Department of Education is approved and we can get an agreement in place, that's another factor that could be in there, because we have only added factors based on our adult site users. When you go through and you see these factors, they're based on adults in transition. And many of these factors are absolutely relevant for high school students. But there might be additional factors that we haven't thought of. And so if you think of them or you want them, let us know, because that's part of the consortium process. You know, people that are part of consortium have a voice in how we develop. Any questions? Okay. So I'm going to move on to another sorting tool. This tool, the certificate sort, is available under the education tab. And I'm going to go to school sort. So school sort has to do with 2- and 4-year schools throughout the entire nation. So Oregon's certificate sort is only programs of study offered within the state of Oregon or right on those borders. School sort is Oregon, but also national. And I'm just going to give an example of how school sort was used, or I had a question that came from a counselor in Central Oregon. And she said, I have this kid, and he wants to get an associate's degree. He doesn't want to get a bachelor's degree. He wants to get an associate's degree. And he really wants to do a program of study that is exercise science or kinesthesiology. So I'm just going to go ahead and add kinesthesiology here. And he wants to get a full ride scholarship in cross country. So we went into men's sports and selected cross country, the scholarship. Yep.
Sorry, how did you get from associates to program of study?
So the first, are you under undergraduate school sort? So the question I had is, how do I get to program of study?
Yeah.
And then academics
Okay.
is the program of study.
Okay.
And then I went to sports.
Yep.
And location, let's just throw in some locations. Let's put in Oregon. I think there's some in Arizona. And I don't know where else there might be. Let's try Hawaii just for fun. And so these are the schools in those 3 states that meet those criteria. And he ended up getting a full ride to a community college. And so if I click on Mount Hood Community College, I am going to go to that institution. And here I can find out all sorts of information about that institution. But then if I scroll down, and I happen to know where it is, to Therapy and Rehabilitation Services, and then I open up that exercise science, that's where I'm going to get that detailed information, that link to that program of study, phone numbers to that department, so that students can take that natural next step. That's really the heart of what CIS is that localized information that embeds that natural next step to invite students to get further engaged. I could redo this, and so I'll just, well, actually, let me, before I do that, another activity, if you're in this view of the school, is you can compare 3 schools side by side. So you can compare their financial aid offers, or you can compare their costs, you can compare their outcomes, their graduation rates, which is a really good one, or the average student loan debt of the last graduating class. But you can also, if you're early in, or any time really, but 9th grade is an awesome year to do this, have students send a letter to the school. And the school will start sending them mail to their home. If you have a student that's not housing secure, you can send an email. I like the letter because then they get the physical publications that come from that school. But this tool just automatically creates a cover letter or a standard letter. Let me put my name in. Eugene, 97405. I did that wrong. And then I can choose the program I'm interested in. I'm interested in kinesthesiology, so these are all the programs of study at that particular school. Exercise science. And then I create that letter. So I can just print it out and send it off. I'm going to go back and do it a little bit differently. So I'm going to go back to the education and choose a school sort. And let's say that I'm interested in going to a four-year school. So I can choose different locations. I can say this is a bachelor's degree. I don't have to choose each factor. But let's say that I'm interested in going to school in California, Pennsylvania, New York, and New Jersey. And I want a school that is highly selective. So I want the most difficult. And in this case, our threshold is less than 30%. And I want it to be a private school without any religious affiliations. And you can see I'm getting down to 18 schools on this list. So let's go see. I could do school classification. Let's say I really wanted to go to an historically black college and university, or I wanted to go to a women's college. I've got some options there. But I'm going to go ahead and get my results based on what I've put in so far. And you can see these are the schools that I have. So if I click on Harvey Mudd, I can find out details about Harvey Mudd. I can send them a letter. I can compare. But these would be the schools. We include all of our national schools come through, we license the information through Peterson's. So our national school and scholarship information comes from Peterson's. Any questions? No? Okay. Yeah. That's a great question. So, that's a really great question because it comes from a lot of different streams. Of course, we take the national data into consideration, but then we also have the localized information from the Higher Education Commission, so we bring that in. But then we also reach out to all the schools and gather that program of study, very detailed information. So there's lots of different streams that we take it from. The career pathways we get from the career pathway folks. And so it just really depends on those agreements and relationships that we have with agencies, but also individual institutions.
That makes your information richer than what a student might find at InfuSure or...
So I've been asked to repeat questions, and I've been forgetting, so let me go back. So the question I had was, where do I get the Oregon information from? And that comes from those various streams. And then the question, which seems more like a prompt, is that the information in the Oregon CIS is more rich than you would get in a lot of other places. Well, anywhere else, yes. I mean, we're the only place that really takes the time to work with each individual school, because the goal of our entire mission is to empower people to better engage in career. And so this is not, it's really focused on Oregon and helping Oregonians take that next step. Any other questions? No, I welcome questions, yeah. Absolutely. So if I go to the letter, so really the letter is located under any school title. So let's say you want to send a letter to Harvey Mudd. Let's go in and do Harvey. So this is going to be under a U.S. school. So if I click on Harvey Mudd College, it's right here. Do you see this little button right here? And then I can send that email.
What's that save button?
So the save button, which has a star, I can save this school to my portfolio. So the end result really is to have a student be able to create an articulated transition plan, right? This is a occupation I'm interested in. These are the programs of study that will get me there. And these are the schools that offer those programs of study. And here are some scholarships that can help me along. So if a student's going to a traditional four-year school or two-year school, that would be the transition plan that you'd look for. And they could have a lot of different transition plans. By saving it in their portfolio, it helps them streamline the schools or programs, scholarships, or occupations they're looking at. So the STAR lets them save it in their portfolio. When they save it, they also have an option whether or not they want to add that school to their FAFSA list in the application tracker, and if they want to include that in applying to schools list in their application tracker. So the application tracker is a student-based tool that helps them manage school and scholarship and financial aid applications. Yeah.
So the portfolio travels with the student from grade to grade, and from with the student from school to school. Let's say the student transfers sophomore year to different schools within the same school district. Does the portfolio still exist in there, and when it is updated?
So the question that I have is, how does the portfolio work in terms of transferring? Does it go from school to school within the district, and how does it update? So if you look at one of the handouts that I have where I say that it's used throughout Oregon, the portfolio transfers to any site that uses CIS throughout the entire state. So if you've got students that are transferring in from another school district, they can bring their portfolio with them. If you've got students that are transferring within your school district, it can transfer by the student or by the administrators, or you have a single sign-on option where it can automatically transfer within a district. Yeah, I think that answers that. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
It also seems that this would be a valuable tool for someone knowing the graduation rate in Oregon who is between high school and determining whether they want to go back to school or not.
You know, that's such a great question, and it is. Once a student has a portfolio in your district, they can transfer it to a school that they go to, but they can leave it here. So your graduates can continue to use their portfolios really for the rest of their lives through your school district license. And because people are ready at different times or they see relevance in career planning at different times, and it gives them a chance to go back and then access that updated information. And it is intended exactly as you described, to help people when they're not sure, they're in transition, no matter what time of life they're in. Yeah. Yeah.
So can we talk about after they graduate and they can have access to their information with CIS, is that forever? What other places can they access?
So the question is, after a student graduates, they can continue to access their portfolios, and how long, and what are the other places? So they can continue to access their portfolio for the rest of their lives, really, with one caveat. We have a policy in place in which if a portfolio hasn't been accessed for over 5 years or 4 years, at that 5th year mark, we reserve the right to delete it. And we haven't ever done that. We just keep getting more server space. We're at the university. But you know, that is an option, because each portfolio, they can upload up to 20 megabytes of storage, so they can put their favorite papers in there. You know, they can put their favorite PowerPoints or other documents. And so that's space that we have to be aware of. And your second part of your question related to?
So it's my understanding that CIS is available at libraries or at the employment department, so it's available other places as well,
Yes.
right?
Yes. So a student, really, if the public employment offices, but also libraries can license CIS, individual organizations. OHSU licenses CIS for their employees. So they have a whole component in OHSU about how much you can make in different classes of occupations, and it's all about empowering their employees. So you have employers that use CIS, and the portfolio can transfer in from that as well.
So what does the account access and management piece look like for those kids who finish high school? So if in fact we're doing Active Directory authentication or SAML or OAuth, then after they graduate from high school, then what does the account management look like for those kids who are after high school with regards to usernames and passwords?
So those, well, two things. Logistically, those accounts are flagged and they're placed in a hidden file that schools can still access, but it's not part of your reporting. So they're housed still within your organizational interface. And in terms of usernames and passwords, if you go to a single sign-on, then students manage their own usernames and passwords. They can go in and they can change it to anything they want. And so, so students have their own account interface, so I'll show you here. This is not going to display that they can manage their username in this interface because this is in a single sign-on interface. But if I were here and I was accessing CIS with single sign-on, I would have, not only could I enter a new password, but I could also change my username. The username would still have to be unique, but the students can manage that anytime during high school, and there would be an event or some sort of education to help them do that before they graduate. Does that answer your question?
Partially.
Okay. But
I don't want to discuss it. I think we can kind of have that. That's getting in the weeds a little bit. But I think there's a little bit of, at least as I look at. So the point of single sign-on would be to connect to our OAuth or our single sign-on directory at PPS, and we don't want kids being able to change their username and password while they're at PPS.
they couldn't.
Okay.
I mean, they could, but it wouldn't make any impact on the single sign-on process because the single sign-on overrides it while this part of the single sign-on. But you know what? We can have that conversation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Because what I would do is I would get my lead developer to have that conversation with you, and he would use language that would be much more specific to the environment. Yeah.
In CIS, it links to our synergy student platform, and if it's not, CIS links to Synergy, and if it's not, how can the students update their email addresses, let's say? We know that when they are freshmen, from the time that they are freshmen to the time they are seniors, they change email address all the time.
Yeah.
So just because you mentioned the fact that CIS is connected to the financial aid process, I'm kind of wondering, so what's going to happen when they are seniors and they want to link the CIS with financial aid? The email address is going to be totally different, most likely, than what it was when they were freshmen.
CIS, we reprogrammed the accounts a year ago, and we added 2 email addresses, partially because of the single sign-on. You know, they're using the school email, so there's 2 fields for email addresses in the portfolio accounts, and so they could modify those in any way they want. Does that answer your question? I don't know that I'm really...
But it's not linked.
We do not link to Synergy, other than if you export through Active Directory, through Synergy, those accounts overnight, and then that's synced. Okay. Going to go back to CIS. So I've gone over the school sorts, so certificate sort, school sort. I want to make sure and touch base on financial aid sort. So financial aid sort is a tool. There's 3 ways you can find scholarships in CIS, but this is one. And this is a way in which people can identify those factors that are most important to them. And just in terms of CIS, you can see we've got 3,924 scholarships listed in CIS. A little over 1,000 of those are Oregon specific. So school districts can add scholarships. If a school district sees a national scholarship that isn't on our list, then we go out and we get the information and we update it, provided it meets our inclusion threshold, which are set by the board. And so people can look for scholarships based on any factors or credentials that are, not credentials, but are experiences that are important to them. So I'm just going to kind of go through the characteristics: men, women, racial background, physical or learning disability, ethnic or national background, and then religious affiliation, and then communities. So if there's a scholarship that's only for students that live in Multnomah County, you can choose Multnomah County. And then those scholarships that are relevant are going to come up. You can also suppress scholarships. So let's say you do not want to include any awards based on religious affiliation. You can suppress those so that those won't come up. And so what that does is I'm going to kind of update it, and you can see the number of awards that are listed. I think it's working on it, that meet different criteria. So post-secondary plans, academics, if I'm interested in, or if I'm really good at school, or I'm looking for a scholarship where I don't have to be good at school, I can make those choices. Post-secondary plans, full-time enrollment, part-time enrollment, which year, and also location. So if I think I'm going to go to school in New Mexico, I can look for New Mexico-based scholarships. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
No.
That,
Oh.
So you mentioned New Mexico. Would that include scholarships at colleges and universities in New Mexico, or are these outside scholarships?
You know, that is a great question. So when those would be our national scholarships. So they would be scholarships that were collected by Peterson's that relate to New Mexico. If someone were interested in a New Mexico school, so I'm just going to kind of put in New Mexico and look for U.S. schools that are affiliated. So let's say I'm going to go to New Mexico State University in Carlsbad. What I would recommend that they do if they click on financial aid, here's going to be, oh, actually, let me check back. General information. Wait a second. Yeah, I'm surprised. So if we've got a link to a financial aid website, we should have that here, but I don't see it. So I don't. What? You know, so if it's there, if there's a link, let's see if we can find it better. A more sharing school in New Mexico.
Yeah.
Okay, University of New Mexico. Universidad. A lot of schools. New Mexico. So Albuquerque? Okay. So then if I go to financial aid, yeah, so you can see we have the link and the email. And so that's where I would recommend you would go. And I mean, you could use the national scholarships, absolutely, but this is going to be very specific to the institution. Thank you.
And just wanted to confirm very quick. So the financial aid, the scholarship sort is updated every year.
Well, it is updated twice a year, but it's the Oregon scholarships, those 1,000+ scholarships that we manage that we update. And then we license it from Peterson's once a year. So it is updated. We
Thank
take
you.
full responsibility for any scholarships that we update, but we license the national information.
Thank you for that.
Oh, sure. Yes? Oh.
Raquel, annually they'll ask your school to share scholarships that are related to your school, maybe the boosters or PTA, or even if you get an email from a new group, hey, we're your local blah, blah, blah club and we want to give a scholarship. You can send that information to CIS and they'll add it to the database. So your users will find, oh, Franklin High School scholarship from the blah, blah, blah club. So that's kind of cool too. Very personal.
So how does that, who gets that email in each of our schools?
Site administrator. The site administrator gets that email, or you
That would
can
be
also
me.
just contact us. Okay, academics. Let's say programs of study. Let's say you've got someone who's interested in nursing. They can look for nursing scholarships. Nursing has an enormous amount of scholarships. So you can look for nursing scholarships and get your results. I'm going to go ahead and continue. Financial need, this depends on whether or not award is based on needs, and then more about you or about the students. This is where leadership comes into play, whether or not they're involved in civic associations or unions. So the Klamath Falls Education Association has a scholarship. The National 4-H has scholarships, but doesn't qualify for most people or doesn't apply to most people. So we have this, checked off initially. Also affiliation with a business. So, there are businesses that will have scholarships. And so we include them here as well. Hobbies and talents. This is another one. So a lot of details, because scholarships can be very specific. And so we try to make sure that we give enough tools to help people find scholarships. So once people get their awards, and so let's go ahead and look at, the Bailey Passion Scholarship. I wonder what that's about. Is it really? That was not planned. So you can see, though, this is the same sort of embedding. We have links to provide that natural invitation to the students taking the next step. And we have additional contact information for students so that they can apply. Students can save these scholarships in their portfolios in their middle schools. They can save it early in 9th grade. And then when they go back their junior or senior year and they're getting ready to apply, any updated information will be there. So scholarship searching doesn't have to wait until later in the year. The data is updated once throughout the time that they're using CIS. Any additional questions about the financial aid sort? Yeah.
Hi, okay, so back to school-specific scholarships. So just an example at Grant, we have our ones committed, chosen by most of our grant specifics are chosen by the committee at the end of the year. And to access those, you have to do OSAC. So when they do OSAC, it says, oh, you're eligible for these grant-specific scholarships. So if I also put those, should I also put those in CIS or
No.
maybe just hold those out?
You can
because-
always send them to us, but we'll cross-reference because about 40% of our Oregon-specific scholarship are from OSAC, and we have the dollar amounts listed.
Yeah.
But they'd already be in CIS, or they should be.
Okay. OSAC's already in there. Okay, that's
Yeah.
awesome. So if I have like a few holdouts that aren't in the OSAC selection, I could send them to you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. All right, thanks.
Sure. In fact, we'd love it because that helps, people, I don't know if it's only for current students, but let's say it's students that are somewhere else and they realize there's a grant-specific scholarship because they went there. So it could help graduates as well. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm going to move on to a couple more things. This handout that I gave you, it talks about the current CIS development, and I just want to kind of synthesize a little bit about who we are and where this is coming from. So within that invitation, kind of our values is that localized information, that it's interactive, and that it's research informed and field designed. So we use research, we work with researchers at the University of Oregon, and we take it to the field to make sure that the field helps design it. Part of what we do also is we try to connect with graduate students at the University of Oregon in order to make sure that CIS is vetted and to see how impactful it is. And recently we had a PhD student who's now a doctor, Eric Garcia, who went through our educational psychology PhD program and used CIS within his PhD. And he looked at 2 9th grade cohorts, one in Roseburg, the other in Salem, and trying to define or quantify what kind of impact CIS had with those students. And he was looking at work hope, he was looking at decision-making, self-efficacy scales, and different things. And and as soon as it's published, I'll be able to share it more formally. But one of the things that his research found out, which is very important to me, was first that it demonstrated better outcomes after using CIS, but that there was no significant differences in the results observed in the career variables for students based on family income and based on race or ethnicity. So using CIS had the same impact for all students, no matter, on those particular variables, and that was very important to me. We work hard to make sure that CIS represents that everyone and all work and all types of education has value. I've also been asked to show you a little bit of our curriculum, so I want to make sure and cover that. I'm getting toward the end of my time, and I don't want to run over. So there's lots of different curriculum options in CIS. I would just take you to, if you click under Tools for Teachers and Counselors, which is in this bottom right corner under Site Resources, If you click on that, then you have a curriculum tab. And so this has different types of curriculum. We're going to be adding elementary curriculum here next week. We've got some for K-12, and it's really cute. Like the kindergarten ones, they're just alphabet sheets where they, repeat A for astronaut. But then it gets more complex as they get older, of course. But the Discovery and Passage is where I'm going to take you, but you have different curriculum. Project Access is curriculum to help students with disabilities advocate advocate for themselves or prepare for their IEP meetings. This was developed, it was a project that was developed between the University of Oregon as well as vocational rehabilitation. And so you can see there's lots of different units: self-awareness, social skills, self-advocacy, disability, cognitive skills, and career options. There's tools that you can use to find different things, but there's also just tons of resources. So if you're working with students with disabilities, this is a great resource to find supporting documents to help parents and to help teachers and to help students. I'm going to take you to Discovery and Passage. Discovery and Passage is kind of like a cookbook of curriculum related to careers. And you can sort on many different factors, the kind of stage they are in high school. You can sort on high school diploma graduation, subject areas or essential skills, Common Core state standards, and then CIS elements. And I'm going to just give a couple here. I'm going to go ahead and put our career and technical education in. And so I'm going to go ahead and also add, let's say, 9th and 10th grade, and click search. And so I'm going to have a lot of different types of activities that are available to you and your teachers. One of the ones that I like is all aspects of an industry, where students investigate several aspects of 2 industries and then visit 2 local businesses. So it's just a process. And you can take pieces of that process out, or you can do the whole process. So if I click on this activity, I just want to show you a little bit about what this looks like. You've got an overview at a glance, the essential questions, then preparation and steps. So it really reduces the amount of prep time teachers have to take, because it just takes them right through. This is a multi-day activity because it's pretty complex. You have variations and assessments. And then you have all the materials. So you've got a PowerPoint already built for you that you can modify. You have all aspects of industry worksheets, questions, handouts, PDFs, scoring guides. And so this is just here for you to use and modify. We include both Word and PDF, so that if you want to take it and modify it for a particular industry or a particular outcome, you can. Yeah?
Do you have any school districts importing this information into a district learning management system?
No, not that I know of at all. That's an interesting idea. Yeah. So the question was, do we have any school districts importing this information into a learning management system? And my answer is no. It's an interesting idea. So there's lots of different activities in here. Attitude adjustment is a good one, helping students sort of flip the script on positive attitudes and how they change outcomes. But this sorting factor, just going in and choosing different factors, can help you find how to set goals. How do you make decisions? And you can also do it very specifically for CIS activities. Let's say you want students to think about how they can prepare, what different factors are available in school sort. So there's an activity that talks about decision-making choices and utilizing factors. So you're thinking about more than just going to school where your best friend, Meredith, is going. So questions. What questions do you have? Or what more questions do you have? Yeah.
If you had a freshman who said, how do I access anything because you're rushing me so much, how do you say that we can take you through a process and think about careers that are in your wheelhouse?
So the question is, if I have a freshman that says you're rushing me too much, and you want to know what is the process that you would use, that I would use to take them through, to let them think about careers that are in their wheelhouse, I would, especially with someone has those kind of questions, I would always start with an exploration tool or perhaps reality check. Reality check's a lot of fun. But I would probably start them with the short interest profiler. So that's just 60 questions, controlled for an 8th grade reading level. And what that is going to do is, I'm going to just do some results right here. I can automatically generate some results. That's going to give them their top 3 personality traits. So the results are displayed by John Holland's codes. And John Holland, forgive me if I'm repeating stuff, you guys probably already know this, but John Holland, 6 basic personality types in the world. So everybody has these, are part of these 6 basic personality types. And you always choose the top 3 because that creates a triangle. And all of those occupations are good ideas for you to explore. But I also like to have students look at their lowing scoring occupational personalities. So for example, in this one that I just kind of automatically generated, realistic came up really low. Well, why do I think that might be? Because the goal of an assessment is not to, in a career assessment, is not to find your perfect job or perfect set of jobs. Instead, it's really about helping people learn about themselves and really get an idea of who they are so that they can apply that knowledge when they start to really research. So I always like to look, well, what's the difference between your high scores and your low scores? And give that student time to really look at the results and work with it. And I think that's a step that's really important in the career development process because it's about giving kids language to use. So once those are done, social came up as my top, so I'll use that. Social are activities where you like to help and assist other people. It's not necessarily going out to a party, although it could be. And so I have different types of occupations. It defaults to career clusters, so if they're thinking about career clusters. But you can also change it. So maybe it's a student that it's really important that they make a lot of money. So here it is organized by wages, and it starts really low, but I could go down to the bottom and I can see, oh, well, here's people who make more than $60,000 a year. And acupuncturist comes up first. So I'd start them off and then have them look at occupations. Depending on where that student was, I think you could pair another tool, kind of more engaging. Reality check. How many of you use reality check? It's probably our most popular tool in CIS because it's fun. You get to build the lifestyle to which you'd like to become accustomed and then look for occupations that will pay you that. So, you can start reality check and this will ask you, well, where do I want to live? And after you choose where you want to live, I'll say Portland. This is a good example of localized data too, because we go out to every metropolitan area and find average data on how much it costs to live there. So am I going to live at home? Am I going to be in a 1-bedroom apartment? So 1 bedroom in Portland is $1,150 basically, and that's very different than if I'm living in Roseburg, right? So let's say I'm going to be in a 1-bedroom. If I know I'm going to share housing, I can enter my own dollars in here. So there's a lot of flexibility, but it goes through different processes. And am I going to have water and heat? How am I going to communicate? Do I want to eat food? How am I going to get around? And then students go through that, and then a list of occupations that match that median salary is generated to kind of help students think about. And so depending on where that student is, if one assessment was good, then that would be great. Or if I wouldn't pair it with another assessment so much as I might pair it with something like this that uses data. Another good one could be occupation sort, because you can use all sorts of factors like I really want to work outside and I don't want to get any more education, but I want to make a lot of money. What are those occupations? So just letting people pick and choose. And then giving them time to get into the occupations. Say take 3 occupations that they really think they're interested in, and building sort of a day in the life. Would I be energized if I, coming home after this job, or occupation? Would I, do I have the fidelity to get the training that's necessary to enter that occupation? What does that work environment look like?
We had a question online.
Oh, so
The question is the estimates of rent and cost updated twice a year as well?
no, we update reality check once a year. Yeah. And these are averages. One of the things that we also often get with healthcare, so our healthcare is actually a national average when we can't get localized information. This is built for a healthy young adult. So, there could be variances in this. And when I work with, I'll say grown-ups, that I'm doing a training. Everybody says this is way low, but this is national data. So, yeah. Thanks for the question.
You show that they could compare schools side by side. Can they compare occupations side by side?
Yes. So occupations, if I go into occupations, I can compare occupations. I can compare up to 2 occupations. So let's say I want to see what the difference is between an executive, an administrative service manager, and a accountant and auditor. So I can compare these 2 occupations side by side. So I can look at what the preparation requirements are. You know, what kind of training do I need to get in order to enter into this occupation? But I can also look at what the hiring practices are. How do people get employed? Whether or not, if there's a person with a criminal record, whether or not it's difficult to get employed in that particular occupation. And if it is, where I get information, how I contact the licensing board. What the difference in wages is. And you can see administrative services managers makes quite a bit more than accountants and auditors. Although, was it the same amount of preparation? I didn't look. Yeah, bachelor's degree and 1 to 5 years of related work experience. Helpful high school courses. So you could do comparing, and that would be a really good activity, especially if you had that student compare an occupation they think they would never like with an occupation they think they would like. What are the differences, you know, in terms of common work activities or interests and values? That could be a really great way to help them learn about themselves. Yeah.
So I'm thinking this is amazing. I'm super
good.
excited to use it because I work with a lot of students who just like really aren't sure
Yeah.
what's going to happen next.
When they shouldn't be,
Yeah.
right?
But my question is, so I'm thinking of a few of my students for whom this is a lot of text, it's a lot of reading, and so some of them are like on a modified diploma and might need some kind of accommodation. So because you do this also with like vocational rehab folks, is it just having someone there next to the student to kind of guide them through, or is there another version of this which would be a little more basic? Do you understand what I'm asking?
I do.
Yeah.
I think I do. I'll try to
Okay.
answer that
Okay.
if I don't.
Thank you.
But I'm going to answer it in 2 different ways. So I'm going to answer in one way, which is we have a middle school version, which is controlled for a 5th grade reading level.
Okay.
So there's a 1-to-1 connection between the occupational descriptions, between the standard or the high school version and the middle school. So you could get them on the middle school version and then read about the occupation, which would be an easier way for them to access
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
But I would also say that we are redesigning CIS. And so right now, when you land in CIS, you land in this really, it's like going into a library, right? It's a data-driven environment. And the new redesign is going to land them in their dashboard. And then there's a process through which that you can define that would guide them through, that would have language that you would write down in much simpler language.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Sure. Language? Oh, Spanish. Okay, so so the question is, do we use CIS? Is CIS in any other languages? CIS has a level of complexity and we control for reading levels, so we can't automatically translate CIS, or we can only translate it within a limited frame. So the language that we have the most elements of CIS translated into is Spanish. So if you go into an assessment here, interest profiler, and I'm going to go right up here, this middle button will automatically translate it into Spanish. We also have a number of other things translated into Spanish, and if you click down here under Site Resources, if you remember earlier we went to the tools for teachers and counselors, and now the second one is the Recursos para Latinos. If you click on this, this is going to have all, and because I click Spanish, do you see that it controls for the Spanish? So now anywhere I go, it's already translated into Spanish. And so this is going to be all the resources in CIS that are translated into Spanish. And then I have additional resources out in the field and in Oregon related to, that are translated into Spanish from different resources in the state and nationally. And then here's resources for education. So, and this is organized by audience: high school students, parents, college students, teachers, and counselors. We are at 10:02. I don't know, I mean, any other questions? Yes, Cal?
I was looking over the exploration assessments, more assessments, and then exploration resources. And when I click on About Assessments, I found that 2 or 3 of the assessments have a note that say not available at all sites. Does that mean that it's not available at all the PPS school, or is not available at PPS at all? What does that mean?
It could mean different things depending, but sometimes there are a couple assessments in CIS that we have to license from, and so we have to pay a license fee in order to get them. What's a good example? Ideas. Ideas is a good one. So in order to license, we have to pay $125 to license Ideas every site. So we charge the sites $150. So we make $25. So that would be a good example. So you could add that to your license, but then that's an additional $150 a year to your license fee. Something, I know this is CTE, so I want to show you an assessment that I didn't think about doing earlier. The Workplace Employability Skills Assessment was developed by the CTE community in the state of Arizona. So Arizona's CTE community came through and they said, we want a tool that will help students self-assess whether or not they are, and Arizona is part of the National CIS Network, which is how we get this. And so students go through and they answer questions about how high their skills are related to their soft skills. So I listen carefully to others without interrupting. I'll say low. I make presentations with confidence. I can summarize written or spoken content. I can use different technologies to communicate. I contribute my personal strengths to a team. So there's a number of different questions. And the results from this, I was almost there. There we go. They display whether or not I'm proficient in a particular area, I'm knowledgeable, or I need improvement. So this can be a really good tool to kind of help students or talk through some of those soft skills and what that looks like. And these are the different domains. You've got legal and ethical practices. If I click on that, I'm going to get a definition. Thinking and innovation skills, complex communication skills, collaboration skills, initiative and self-direction, professionalism, organizational culture skills, intergenerational and cross-cultural competency skills, and financial aid skills, or financial practices skills, I should say. But that, for CTE, that can be a really helpful tool. And again, it's a student self-assessment, so there's no formal assessment. But the CTE community in Arizona really took time to go through these and really make sure that they met their needs. This is something, if we saw some gaps in this, we could Oregonize it, so we can make it for Oregon, but really this came out of Arizona. Yeah.
Thanks for the introduction. I haven't used this tool before, but I'm seeing, I'm thinking if I'm going to teach resume writing, we might start with this because students don't know what their skills are. And this would get them thinking about big categories of things that they might want to highlight their strengths. So that's how
a great idea.
Does anybody else have an idea how they might use that?
I think even for forecasting, when the counselors are talking to students about CTE or elective classes for next year, based on this, they can recommend the student if the student is interested in a particular career pathway, but the reflection from the assessment is telling the counselor, like, well, you may need more development or a particular skill, right? I don't know, I'm just wondering, but I haven't used before. It's amazing, thank you.
You know, I hadn't thought of what you were suggesting with the resume prep. I love that idea. I have heard this used, students taking this before they go out and do a job shadow, or before they go out and do an internship. So and so in terms of areas where they want to grow, or areas, yep, yep. So in terms of time, I know we're after 10, so I don't want to, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.